Okay, I've got a couple of problems here. We'll start with this one. That's what you wanted to start with. On the screen, I don't want to mess with the camera because it moves in discrete increments. I've got it set up so I think maybe the watermark won't be too obtrusive. Anyhow, the slope of the line, that's what it says there, slope of the line through these 2 points. So that's a really straightforward question. Okay, well, that's just to start with. Y equals mx plus b, which is a perfectly good place to start. Okay, that's an equation of a straight line. And I think we know this. If we plug 2 and 7 in here, 2 for x and 7 for y, because those are the x and y coordinates, we get 7 equals 2m plus b. Okay, I write the 2 in front of the m because that's just more traditional. If you write m2, it'd be easy to confuse that with m squared or something, just to avoid errors. So it's okay to write this as x times m, which would be 2 times m. Okay. Okay, well, we do the same thing here. Okay, you can also have them that -4 equals 5m plus b. So what can we do with this? Well, it's real easy to solve one of these equations for b. Okay. So the first equation for b, all we have to do is subtract 2m from both sides, and we get b equals 7 minus 2m. Then we substitute that into the first equation, and the second equation. I'll just say substitute into the second. Then we get -4 equals 5m plus b. Of course, that's just 7 minus 2m. And then we want to solve for m. I'm going to move this board over. I hope I remember I moved it over because you got a watermark right about there. Wipes out everything you're trying to see. Okay. I'll solve this for m. This simplifies. -4 plus -4 equals 5m. Maybe a little hard to read that, but that's just 5m. And done a little more detail on the arithmetic. 4 equals 5m minus 2m and plus 7. So -4 equals 3m plus 7. Subtract 7 from both sides. And you get 3m equals -11. So m equals -11 over 3. Now let me point out that we can do this. We can find the slope. We don't have to go through this to find the slope, although this is easy enough. We can sketch a graph. And so here's the point 2,7. And here's the point 5, -4. We draw what I've called the fundamental triangle between these points. One of the fundamental triangles, the other is drawn down below there. Hypotenuse goes from one point to the other. And the legs of the triangle are parallel to the coordinate axes. And the x coordinate here goes from 2 to 5. In other words, this point on the x-axis is 2. This point on the y-axis is where x equals 5. So if we go from here to here, we go 2 to 5, that's 3 units. And so the length of this side we call the run. 5 minus 2 equals 3. Now, when we do this, we think of going in one direction or the other. We put an arrow on the hypotenuse to show that we want to go in this direction. If we wanted to go in this direction, we could. We'd still get the right result if we're careful. But now, the rise and the run have to, okay, this arrow takes us from this point to this point. We're going to put arrows on the 2 legs. You know, this is a rise and it's a negative rise. This is a run, it's a positive run. This run is in the positive x direction, the rise is in the negative y direction. Okay, the rise we subtract where we start from where we end. Okay. If you start with $10 and end up with $30, that's plus $20, right? You don't subtract where you end from where you start. That would be 10 minus 30, which is negative 20. Okay? You subtract where you end, where you start from where you end. So 30 minus 10 gives you 20. You do it the other way, you think you've lost $20. Now you know better with money, but I don't always know better with more abstract concepts, okay, like graphs. Okay, so what's the rise? It's where you end minus where you start. It's in the y direction, so you use the y coordinates. It's negative 4 minus 7 equals negative 11. Stuff's not together because I didn't anticipate, what you were going to do, and then what I would need to do. And it's no excuse. I could arrange the board better, but okay, here we go. Okay, so the slope is rise divided by run. Certainly you've heard that. Okay, I hope. Although I'm not sure. Okay. The curriculum's not always what you hope it would be, but anyhow, rise over run, and that's negative 11 over 3. Okay. Look. 2 things. Same result. You want to understand it this way, and you want to understand it this way, and then you really understand it. So now we've got the slope. Okay? Now, if we come back to the equations, we can plug in m equals negative 11 third into either one of these equations. Right? And once we do, we have a number for m, and b is the only thing we don't know we can solve for. Okay? So, we'll have to do all this in another board. But, I have to use up all the space here. Okay, now, I'm over here. Either way, we find the slope with 2 equations and limit it and substituting, solve for b and substitute into the other equation, or withdrawing the fundamental triangle and doing the rise divided by the run. And you don't have to draw a fundamental triangle, but I really, really urge you to do that, because it keeps reminding you the geometry of the situation, and you're not just dealing with symbols that don't mean anything. Okay? So, the slope is this. I also have a convention. This is just my convention. It's not going to, your instructor for the pre-calculus is not going to require this convention. Okay? Still, for your own sake, you don't necessarily have to write it out. Think it. I'm going to write the negative 11 thirds here. It indicates that that's not the length of the side or something. I put a box around it, and now I know this means slope. So now I can just look at this picture and see what's going on without having to do all this. Well, one way or another, though, I've still got to use this y equals mx plus b. Whether I get m this way or this way, I now have y equals mx plus b with m equal negative 11/3. And now, of course, you can't see anything for the way the camera focus. Okay, there we go. And I don't know if you can see this. I think, yeah. Okay. Of course, we're in the classroom, you can see it. I want people looking at videos and looking at this remote, we can be able to see it. Okay, y equals mx plus b, m equals negative 11/3. And y equals 7, but x equals 2, because that point is on the graph. If x equals 2, y is up here at 7. Okay? Very good. Okay, so with all this information, we can plug in 7 for y, 2 for x, and negative 11/3 for m, and we can find b. Now that looks like 7 equals negative 11/3 x. X is 2 plus b. So 7 equals negative 22/3 plus b. I always tell you, if you have a fraction, you have denominators in an equation, multiply both sides by the denominator. I'll also mention you want to make sure the denominator isn't 0, and if it's in symbols, sometimes you got to worry about that, but that's not going to be an issue for a little while in your course. Okay. Okay, so we multiply both sides by 3. Distribute 3 through 2 terms on this side and so forth. And we get 21 equals negative 22 plus 3b. So 3b equals negative 43. No, I think positive 43, sorry. And b equals 43 over 3, which is 13 1/3. Now here's 7. On the graph, if we extend this line on up to where it meets the y-axis, does it make sense that this might be at 13? That's supposed to be 13 with a question mark. Chalk is just being spiteful to you today. Okay. And probably doesn't show on the screen, so temporarily I'm going to raise. Whoop. Oh, now I know this thing works upside down. Okay. So I just wrote this. If I extend this up here, it makes a certain amount of sense that this thing would intercept the y-axis at 13. Now, why should it? Well, our equation would be that y equals negative 11/3 x plus 13 1/3. Okay. If x equals 0, y then would have to equal 13 1/3. Now, where does x equal 0? X equals 0 on the y-axis. For every point on the y-axis, x is 0. So this says that if x is 0, in other words, if you're on the y-axis, it has to be y equals 13 1/3. Well, I did draw this particularly well to slope of the line should have been a little steeper here. We've been up more like about here. And, yeah, this is 7, 14's up here, and 13 up there, be right down below that. It'd be about where it should be. And I wasn't careful in drawing the graph. That's a very approximate graph. If I'd have marked off a scale on the X and the Y, I could have drawn the thing and estimated just where the y-intercept ought to be. And I would know then that that's close to the value of b. Because again, if y equals mx plus b and x equals 0, y equals b. Well, interpretation here. B is what you call your y-intercept. And m is the slope between any 2 points on the line. I'll write that out in more detail, but right now we're just hustling to survive because you're in a 7-week course. And it's coming at you like wildfire. Okay, so you don't want to have to evacuate to do something about that fire. That's probably a terrible analogy, but that's okay. Make sense? Right there is a whole lot about the equation of a straight line. Now there's much more. There are formulas you can use. I really advocate pictures to make sense of the formulas. I really advocate understanding the formulas as best you can, but I'm going to leave it to you to figure out how much time you've got and how well you want to understand this stuff. Obviously, you want to understand it really well, but survive and then worry about the finer points of life. Okay?